obviously Wayne in his announcement said that there were health reasons for him leaving. Now his announcement came literally the business day before the trial began, but
right.
Do you question that timing? Now they've also said, I guess, they have since revealed what the health concerns was, and apparently it's chronic Lyme disease was the claim, according to the NRA's lawyers. And they also, the story we just wrote, they also have claimed that Wayne will not receive any sort of financial benefit from the NRA after he's resigned at the end of the month. That's another thing too. His resignation doesn't actually go into effect until the end of the month. So it's
right.
This is another sort of one of the big problems with their legal argument has always been, well, Wayne's at the center of all this stuff, and you're saying you've reformed and fixed things, but the guy who's at the core of it is still running everything, and that's still kind of true because he's still not gone yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no,
but as far as those two claims of that he won't receive any sort of financial benefit from the NRA, no contracting consulting agreement or payment for his likeness or something like, because that had been part of the bankruptcy trial, was that there was this big contract that he was proposed for him to get a lot of money after he left. And that was one of the big controversial things about Woody Phillips, is after he was forced out, they signed him on to be this contractor. So he's still getting money from the NRA.
Right.
And so they're claiming that's not going to happen with Wayne. They're pretty definitive about it too in the letter. And then they also said that it really is just a health concern. What do you make of all this?
Well, yeah, okay, to resign on a Friday before the trial begins on Monday, it looks really suspicious. And you really didn't resign. You were correct. I mean, he's still employed. The resignation is not effective until like January 24th or sometime at the end of the month.
31st.
So he's still employed there. If you were going to make the argument that we really have cleaned house, I mean, when I was on the board back in 2021, I called for Wayne's resignation while I was there. I wrote an email to the board saying, based on all the evidence, Wayne needs to be removed, because then you can really tell the court, we cleaned house. We found fault with management. Management took monies, and we terminated their employment. And that would be a good, strong case in the bankruptcy trial or in the trial with the New York AG. We have fixed these problems. But when the management is still in place, you have no argument. There is no argument that you can say that we've still cleaned house, and yet the management, one of the managers is still there, the CEO of all people. So that argument is pretty hollow. There's nothing to that.
And do you think that has changed now with the resignation, or do you think the fact that he's still in place through most of this trial undercuts it? Or
I think it doesn't. At this point, it doesn't matter. I mean, if, like I said, if they had done this years ago, they might be in a better position to make that argument. I mean, this all has just happened on Friday. It's not. You can't use the argument. There's too much data here to suggest that Wayne was still running it and still have a conflict of interest during all this period of time when they said, oh, we've cleaned up everything. No, you haven't. I mean, you really haven't. So that's not going to fly in court, I don't think.
And what do you make of some of the maneuvering that's been going on internally that seems perhaps connected to Wayne's resignation? For instance, Charles Cotton, who's the current president of the NRA, his term as president was supposed to be up last year. And Willis Lee was supposed to move into that role. He was removed from his officer position and has since been very critical of what's going on at the NRA, including the legal strategy and Bill Brewer. And then Charles Cotton was the board amended the bylaws of the organization to allow him to serve for another term. And then in addition to that, Andrew Arula-Nundum, who was the longtime spokesperson and close confidant of Wayne LaPierre, was moved last month from spokesperson to head of general operations. They fired the old head to do this. And of course, the person who succeeds the executive vice president, in other words, Wayne LaPierre, if he should retire, is the head of general operations. So, obviously there was some internal maneuvering that went along with this whole resignation where, then Charles Cotton has obviously also been very supportive of Wayne. I believe he was the chairman of the committee that approved a lot of the expenses after the fact.
The audit committee.
The audit committee, right? So right. He's a longtime Wayne ally as well. What do you make of all that?
Well, okay, so this is pretty classic. From my experience of being on the board, the bylaws, they don't follow the bylaws. I mean, that's the whole point of having them. It gives you a guideline that the board can use to have good governance of the board. They never did. I mean, I would bring up objections all the time in board meetings about things that they were doing that was totally in violation of the bylaws. They didn't care. They really didn't care. I mean, they would just get up and say, well, there's a lot of things in the bylaws. I mean, those are just suggestions, and then to manipulate them to keep Charles Cotton in place. Again, that's just another abuse of the bylaws. I mean, one of the things in the bylaws is the board is totally responsible for any change in the charter of the organization. For example, like if you were going to file bankruptcy, the board is responsible for that. They delegated that to the special litigation committee. They delegated their authority away. You can't do that. You can't delegate a core authority away because then you lose the oversight. So the bylaws, they don't follow. They didn't follow them while I was there. They obviously still not follow them because they manipulate them in whatever form they want. So, which also makes it look bad in the trial because you have to follow the bylaws. They don't. And that's just more evidence that the New York AG's office will use in the trial. So it's unfortunate that they still do this.